Alrighty everybody, welcome back to another episode of my Create playthrough. So last time we wrapped up our iron pipeline and I've actually been sitting here waiting in AFK for it to make some things, and I've made a couple of other adjustments as you might see here. So we're just going to run through those quickly and then we'll talk about what we're going to do today. So off camera I got our andesite line working. So I put in a few presses at the top here, and I've actually piped a lava pump all the way from our cobblestone generator over here, and you can come down and have a look. So I'm bringing lava out of those lava pits into cauldrons, and then once those fill up they get pumped along here and then into the basins over here. And that's using us quite a hefty chunk of andesite. You'll see some polished andesite in there from when I forgot to put filters on those basins. And our iron production's also going pretty well here at the moment. We've got a stream of gravel and flint that's currently just not being used and is getting deleted. We might change that at some point. We might put a recirculator in for the gravel in particular. Flint, I think you tend to just get a ton of that you don't really need. And yeah, that's about the size of it. I changed up the belt configuration a little bit because it made more sense to just have two funnels here. And I've very briefly chucked like a couple of bricks in here just to see how it looks. Bricks are obviously quite an expensive block. Luckily we can automate clay creation, but it's still not very trivial. The plan today is I want to clear out all the space we're going to need up until floor 2. I want to put in the floor for floor 2, and then I want to start putting some of our machinery and some of our links in for that, so like making sand and processing all of that up there. The next thing we're going to do is, once we've got that up and running, we should be able to make clay and we should be able to make bricks. We're going to sit there for a while, let the bricks cook, and then start building our factory. So if I stand on my sunken ship here, you actually get a pretty good look at what the hillside looks like. So my idea is I want to put like a big like kind of window here, like a kind of a cafe tea room for the workers, and then have our general factory building coming up like that on the behind it. So we're going to be using a lot of bricks for that one, a lot of deep slate, a lot of copper. So it's going to be very resource gathering episode off camera. But yeah, so that's about the size of it. I am going to go ahead and get started putting together a little bit more of a hole in the roof so that we can build our second floor. Okay, bad news, I got stuck in the crushing wheels, which is not a thing I realised could happen, and I suspect that means all my stuff will now be crushed up, but we'll see what survived. It looks like some of it has. There's a bunch of dirt here because I was digging out the ceiling. The good news is none of it should really matter for getting washed. There's no blocks that I had on me that I'm worried about getting washed away. Oh good, okay, my armor is not yet crushed. That's a positive. And I've still got tools. I will need to stand over here though and make sure nothing gets lost through this process. No, it looks like we're alright. There's nothing weird that's gone into those. Okay. What else can we recover? Okay, well that's not ideal. So we're going to have to go gear up again. Oh no, there they are. Okay, hang on. Can I get in safely enough to pick them all up? I can now that I've got a pickaxe for sure. Okay. Whew. We do not need to go and re-gear. I didn't even realise I still had the beacon on me. That would have been real bad to lose. Okay, so lesson learned, stay away from the things that can crush you to death, because they'll do that, and then you might lose all your things. Let's get back to digging out the top. And let's turn this on while we're at it, just because we may as well be making some iron while we go. Okay, so we went ahead, we dug that out a bit more, so you can see we've got quite a bit more headroom now, and the hill is slowly disappearing. So now, the question is what to do next, and I think the next thing we really want to get going is sand production. So sand, we can actually just make by pulling more gravel out, and crushing that again, and crushing wheels. So what I'm thinking is that we'll have some gravel things here, so pull out 2 or 3, maybe even 4 parts gravel. I think just 2, and bring them over here to then get piped up and into those crushing wheels. Now the thing is, those crushing wheels, we want to be a little bit careful because at the moment they're just about being overrun by the cobblestone. So you can see here our weighted ejectors are going to back up shortly just because there's such a processing hold at those crushing wheels there. So I'm thinking it's probably worth making another set, just putting them next door. So what I thought I'd do is I'd run these through here, run them maybe up here, and then crush the sand. Or I could put those second pair of crushing wheels on the second floor. And I'm not quite sure which one I want to do. I think thematically it makes more sense to put all the crushing wheels in sort of one place. But I'm not totally sure that that's going to work with my other ideas for the space. Like I wanted to put some storage chambers over there the other day. And also all that sand is going to need to go up to the next level to get turned into bricks and other such implements. I think it makes more sense to put the second set of crushing wheels on the second floor and just have that spare gravel kind of pop up there. Maybe I can power it with an encased fan to shoot it up. So I will go ahead and get that prepared and maybe also chuck a quick layer of blocks on that second floor to make sure it is a consistent floor. Cool, see you in a moment. Okay, I felt like doing a bit of work off camera, so possibly I showed you that in a time lapse just now, possibly not, who knows. But we have extended our production line a fair bit. So over here we've got a new set of crushing wheels, just to solve the problem of backing them up in the sand. And we're running that sand into here. It gets, I haven't quite worked out the splitting yet. At the moment it's preferring this side. And I need to work out how I'm going to make it split properly, but I think I'll just use like a tunnel or something. That gets washed into clay. The clay gets cooked into bricks, and you can see we've actually got a fairly sizable chunk of bricks there. We've also got some quartz that's come through, so that's all very cool and exciting. I made a couple of other changes as well, just to the factory in general. So if we head downstairs, I can show you what those are. Okay, so the big change I made here is I have decreased the speed that these mine. So I was noticing that this tended to back up quite quickly, and also the stress impact of these drills is very high. So I've saved myself, I think, 256 times 8, so like almost 1,000 stress units just by halving the speed that runs at. And that's given me enough to play with upstairs, and actually you can see here on the gauge, I've still got 3,500 left to play with, so that should be enough to run the entire factory off of, hopefully. But yeah, so that's where we're at. You can see the andesite's going there. We must have just pumped some more lava in. But we're getting a pretty healthy quantity of iron, very healthy quantity of andesite there actually. We're going to back up soon enough. The next interesting thing for us to do is going to be setting up the processing of the bricks and of the quartz into rose quartz and then polished rose quartz, because we're going to use the base game auto crafter for those. Cool, so if I go ahead and pop a dropper, a couple of redstone dust, a crafting table and a hat on it, we get ourselves a crafter. So we're going to make one more of those and take them upstairs. But we're also going to grab some of that fish that I cooked just before off camera. So the brick auto crafter, I think, should be really simple. It should be a case of hooking up the crafter to the funnel, just blacking out most of the slots so that we can only fill up 4 with bricks, and then attaching a sort of 1-tick redstone clock just to immediately chuck that out into a chest in front of it. So let's give that a go. If I go ahead and break that chest and replace it with a crafter, if I grey out those squares so we can only fill in the brick squares, oh cool, so the funnel does interact with it nicely, that's good to know. And then if we put the chest just here, and if we power it as a test, so if I go ahead and make a lever just quickly, that has indeed put the bricks in the chest. Awesome. That works rather nicely, and we get to make bricks out the end of it, which is very cool. So all I should need is a little bit more wood and a little bit more redstone, and we should be able to set up a nice 1-tick clock just to set that off. So let's go ahead and build one of those. I'm going to build it with the other autocrafter I have because I don't want to waste wood making another crafting table. It's a really goofy way to do it, but that's alright. Alright, 1 and 2. Okay, that has burned out, but if we increase the tick count, we actually don't need both of these, do we? We could just do it with one. That makes more sense. Let's do it with just one, and then we can save this for another clock if we need it. Okay, but now that is powering through. So if I go ahead and just manually insert a whole bunch of bricks, because I have a whole bunch of bricks here, it should steadily tick up our brick count. Awesome. So that is exactly what we want to be doing. With that then, let's make sure all of these are queued up and can be distributed. And we'll just let that chug away while we build the rest. So obviously we'll make this look a bit nicer at some point, but for now, that's pretty good, I reckon. Now our second autocrafter over here is actually going to be quite a lot more complicated because we want to make rose quartz. And looking at the recipe for rose quartz, you can see we need 2 items and we need to wait until the whole crafting grid is filled up, of course, before this fires. And it's going to be much more difficult to just use a clock here. So instead what we're going to do is we're going to use some comparators and we're going to put those together to make this work nicely. So I'm going to go ahead and pop the crafter down. Okay, so like I was saying, the rose quartz crafter is a bit more difficult. And actually, I've got a schematic because I was testing this out in the creative world first. So we're going to go ahead and build it. It requires a couple of comparators. I'll talk you through it while we do it so that you can see what's going on. Alright, so we've got our framing here all set up. So let's go ahead and chuck our mechanical crafter in, seeing as that's going to be the main kind of piece of this. So if we go 1 and then 2 like so, and make sure it's facing the right way. Okay, so we're going to take our comparator output out of the crafter itself, and this will tell us basically how much stuff is in the crafter at a given point in time, and that will allow us to dispense different things into it when we need to. So if we go ahead and run some redstone lines around, these are the logic circuits that are going to help us correctly determine what we need to put into the crafter at any given moment. Okie dokie, just like that. So here's how this is going to work. When you put the first item in the crafter, so I'm just going to use stone as an example, you see we get a comparator output of 1 here. So what that means is this line, not powered, but this line starts to get powered. And what this line does is it does 2 things. First of all, it turns this hopper that will be here, it unlocks this hopper. So this is our redstone hopper, and it will put all the redstone in. So if you imagine that's our quartz, we're going to fill the rest up with redstone. The second thing it does is it locks the quartz hopper, which is going to be here. So that means we're not trying to put any more quartz in, so we don't accidentally get like quartz, redstone quartz, say down here, and then the recipe doesn't fire. Now, once it gets up to 9, so if I fill up all of these slots just with something, there you go, you can see it's powered the crafter. And so what's happened there is it's come down here, and it's turned off this redstone torch, which turns on this redstone torch. And now if it's actually fired a recipe when that happens, then immediately everything will come out of here, and it will reset itself. So it's unlocked this hopper again, it's ready to dispense the next quartz. So let's go make some hoppers and we can see it in action. Okay, so if we add a hopper in this way and in that way, and we go ahead and fill those up. So if I put a bunch of redstone into this hopper, you see currently it's powered, and so that means the hopper will not dispense those items into the crafter. If I go get us some quartz, we should start seeing this work pretty immediately. So if I put this quartz here into that side hopper there, because this is unlocked, it's going to dispense that quartz immediately into the crafter. We're just going to immediately unlock that one, and you can see we are filling up, and we've just dispensed our first rose quartz. Isn't that cool? I think this is a really neat addition, and this is not actually that much more compact than the Create mechanical crafters, but definitely less resource intensive, I think. So what we need to do now is, I'm just going to stand here until all the rose quartz gets collected, but what we need to do now is connect these hoppers up to our main supply line over there. Obviously we are not making redstone in this wee contraption that I've got, So we're going to have to be a little bit careful about how we provision for supply to come in for redstone from that top hopper. But I'm sure we'll manage something. And in the meantime, what we're going to do is we're going to run a conveyor belt just up here and onto that hopper so that we've got quartz coming through nice and easily. Okie dokie, that is all working now. So if we go up the top, oh, here we go, we've got one that's kind of queued up here because we're actually totally full up in this hopper of quartz now. But that will fire in there, and if I go ahead and add some more redstone at some point, that will fire through there. So the last thing to do here is actually to get this out of there, which is easy enough. Just got to break that down and pop a belt in here. And I believe we should just be able to take an output from here into a chest or something similar. And that will suffice for getting our crafted item out of there, just like we did with that one. Alrighty, so we have ourselves our conveyors going into here. Oh, hello. You are a pest, is what you are. Right. And what level do we get of him? Just one. That's boring. Okay. So we now have our setup here. So we've powered our conveyor belt to bring that rose quartz out of the chest. And I've got a deployer set up here holding some sandpaper. And hopefully, if we just add a wee bit of rose quartz to this chest, perfect, so that comes out, it comes down here, it goes under the deployer applies the sandpaper, and the rose quartz popped off the end. Awesome. So, obviously, the problem with sandpaper is it needs to be refilled quite a lot, so I'm anticipating just putting like a bunch in that hopper up the top there. The other thing we need to do at the end of this is actually autocraft these guys with some iron plates into the electron tubes that we want. The other option is, of course, we could just make the rose quartz, because I'm not liking the idea of having to route some of my iron up to here and like potentially be resource inefficient with that and all this kind of mess. So possibly we just make the rose quartz, we store that, and then whenever you want to make something, you just get them out of the stores. I think I like that idea better. In terms of story for the building, I've been thinking, this is going to be one of the older factories. And obviously, like, there is stuff in Create that will let you do factory management really well now, like stock tickers and so on and so forth. I don't really know how it works, I will learn at some point. But I think for this factory, I think it'd be cool not to use any of it, because it's kind of this old building and these old machines that are still working, but you know, definitely aren't cutting edge anymore. And actually, in building onto that, this bottom floor here I'm envisaging as being like the first thing that got built, because it's making really fundamental stuff. And then up here, this addition where we've got all this kind of fancy redstone stuff going on, and we've got this kind of integrated processing unit with the fans and all of that. I think it would be really cool to frame this as like a sort of semi-modern addition. So we can't, the reason we're not bringing that iron sheet up is because the systems just don't agree with each other. They can't talk to each other properly. So it's a little bit inefficient, yes, but I think the story outcome from that is cool. And also I'm lazy and don't want to integrate them properly. I mean what? Yeah, sure. Yeah, I didn't say anything. So I'm thinking we'll make this place look a lot more swish. I want to put some cool fancy housing around that, and I want to put some cool fancy housing around this. But otherwise that's all done, and the only other things we really need to do here are processing lines for shafts and cogwheels and such. Although again, there's something to be said for just leaving those be, I think, here, and not including them. No, I will. I think I will include them. I'll pump some of the andesite up from downstairs. But we'll have to add the zinc and such, that kind of thing, manually, I think. As opposed to drawing iron from the stores, just because we make such little iron and we do want it for other things. So I will go ahead and chuck an exit to this. Okay, so I actually did a couple of things, but mostly I was bringing things up into here, and I sat for a little while I went off to do other stuff in the real world. AFK here, and you can see I've made quite a few bricks, and there's quite a bit of iron downstairs as well, so that's going to set us in a good position for when we actually build the shell of this thing. So you can see down here I've routed our andesite out of that chest and up the whole wall up into this chest here. And we are getting some andesite coming through. I didn't actually know until today that you could blow a fan in at the bottom of a diagonal chute and it would hit all the diagonal chutes up the top. So I was a little bit worried that was going to not work, but it seems to have done so, which is cool. So I'm going to start setting up the production line over here for the andesite. So obviously the first thing that we need for this is the andesite alloy basin. And this is going to be something that needs to have some external input. So obviously all the andesite will feed in this way, but we need some iron ingots or something to feed in from a different direction. Or sorry, nuggets or zinc nuggets to feed in from a different direction and make the alloy. Once we've got the alloy, it gets pretty simple. So we're going to have a saw to turn that into shafts. And let's put that the right way around so that we can actually just put things onto it via a conveyor belt. And then once we've got that, actually can we directly put a saw next to a basin? Will it be nice? It doesn't look like it, does it? Okay, we'll workshop it. Okay, so there's our saw. We'll pull things out onto a conveyor belt here or something. That'll work out. And then we want another conveyor belt. And I think I'm just going to chuck it here, and we're going to do kind of a wee loop this way. I guess if I'm going to do that, then maybe I should move this over too. Okay, so we have another mixer. This is going to craft us our cogwheels, and then we're going to have one last one that makes our large cogwheels. There we go. Okay, so with that all sorted, oh, and we don't actually want a cogwheel there. Good guess though. Alright, let's go ahead and hook it all up, make sure it works. And I'm envisaging this being like really quite a manual production line. So this part might happen automatically, and shafts might happen automatically, or semi-automatically, but converting further is a more difficult prospect and probably won't happen quite so automatically, just so I can have a bit more finer control over what actually gets produced in this process. Alright, and if we just go ahead and pop our hopper there, pop a chest for some nuggets there, that is our andesite line set up. So we've got ourselves an andesite alloy mixing station. It will cut that into shafts, it will turn that into cogwheels, and then over here into large cogwheels, although I haven't set the filter for that yet. I suppose I should do that. There we go. So obviously all of these need a bit more stuff than I've given them here, right? So they need some input for wood in both of these cogwheel portions, which I will set up shortly, make some more hoppers. But other than that, we are ready to get started on designing and detailing this factory. Obviously we've got a bunch of bricks here, and that's going to be the most of our kind of outside. But I suspect we're going to need a lot more blocks than that can give us. And so I think what I'll do is I'll use some stone, I'll use some andesite alloy and some deep slate to just kind of give it a bit of color variation, a bit of depth, as well as not breaking the bank and having to sit here and wait for lots and lots and lots of bricks to cook. Yeah, so I'll get that machinery squared away, and then let's try and build the exterior shell of this place. Okay, so I obviously have been building away at this, and not pictured in the little time lapse you probably got there is the several hours I spent AFKing to get enough bricks for this, because my brick production, it is not very fast. I'm going to be real honest with you. But if we go ahead and jump off the topic here, we can get a good look at what I have managed to do. I don't think it looks too bad. So there's definitely work to do. I want to work on shaping the top of that kind of little dome outcropping that I've got there. And there's some detailing that really should be done on the walls, because at the moment it is just a big brick slab. But I really like where it's going. But I thought I'd take a break, show you guys where we're at the moment, and talk about future plans for this structure. So obviously there will be more to the interior. I need to do the cafe in here. I need to do some other bits and pieces inside the actual factory part. So I want to do some catwalks and like kind of factory control systems. I'm also thinking that I will pop maybe some kind of small outcropping here for like a lift and an entryway properly to get into the building. And the last thing I need is a way to transport all of our material out. And I'm thinking I'll put a door on this side somewhere. It might even be further up, so just out of the second floor up here. But we'll see where it fits. Maybe it'll end up going around the back. And just flatten out a little portion for a kind of a cargo bay. And this will be something I connect up to roads, and also potentially prepare for air collection, for air freight, which would be very cool if I manage to get around to it. But before then, I'm just going to go ahead and finish detailing some of this factory. Probably give you guys another time lapse of that, and then we'll see if we make it to doing an interior before I put this one out. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so it took me a little while because I got kind of sick and then kind of burnt out, and so yeah, but the factory's done. Observe, it is nicely detailed. If I go a little bit further away, you can see we've got some chimneys poking up through the roof there, and those are actually linked up to all our things that would hypothetically produce smoke. So all our lava, just for the cobblestone generator, all the kind of cooking stuff in the top floor for the sand and for the quartz. But this is not all that has happened, because I also managed to give most of the actual factory part an interior. I haven't done the cafe yet. That's a job for later. But we've seen this part before. This is new. We've got ourselves an emergency stop, and you can see it will actually work. If I pull this lever, everything stops. So we're not drilling, conveyors aren't moving, nothing is going. If I go ahead and turn it back off, we are back in action. So I went ahead, I put some of those decals down, and obviously you can see all these catwalks in here now, which is a nicer way for me to get around than using buckets of water all the time. So we can come up here, and we've got ourselves an alarm as well. So if I flick the lever, the alarm goes. And actually the circuit for this was really surprisingly simple. So all it is a kind of no-tick redstone clock, like it just goes until the torches burn out. But it turns out if you just have a power input in here, and then you unpower that, it'll update the torches and they just work. So that's exciting. Up here you've got this little kind of like hanging overseer's kind of corner. So we've got a little manual indicator to say whether the factory is going or not. And then you can also read the book, which has all the emergency procedures, and I spent maybe a little bit too long writing this, but I had fun. So there's a little bit of lore for the building. Then if we go upstairs, which we can do just by going this way, you can see we've made this a bit nicer as well. So we've encased this, so we've got radiation warnings because of the soul fires. And it's all kind of swish and quartz and looks kind of modern. We've still got access to this chest so that we can pull out all the flint that needs to be cleaned. And and if I come down onto the other side and around, at some point I'll house this redstone clock a bit better, and I should probably take this crafting table away. We're making a lot of bricks, as you can see, and a lot of quartz. But yeah, so we've got this big housing here, which is only for Crafter Co. maintenance employees. And then obviously that just houses our little cobblestone circuitry that we made earlier. And then that comes out, and we've got our manual production line here. But that is not all. So obviously the cafe is still to go, and a lot of the external bits, and I think that will happen next time. But I did make a little service area down here, so you can come down by the canals, and then you can get in to the pipes if you need to, and you can kind of walk around here and get access to all the little corners that you might need if things were to suddenly go wrong. Cool. So at some point I'll clean up all those conveyor belts, but otherwise I will see you guys in the next one, I think. So we made a lot of progress this time, which is cool. Probably good, because it took me a while to get the episode out. But yeah, next time, hopefully finishing off a cafe. I've installed Farmer's Delight, which is cool. I haven't played with that mod before, so because there's a lot of food options. And yeah, we'll see what happens otherwise. Maybe we will get to building one of our first vehicles. I want to get some forestry going on, some logging trucks. So that might be the project for next time. Okay. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!